Hey guys, what's up? And in today's video, we'll be talking about photography in 5 minutes or less. So the first thing we'll talk about is the three basic things that you need to understand before you start using the manual or the M mode on your camera, which is basically what all photographers use. Okay, so the first thing we are going to talk about is aperture. So aperture is basically a hole in your lens that lets light pass through it. It is a variable hole, which means it can enlarge or it can contract. So depending on how big your hole is, more light would pass through or less light would pass through your lens and hit the sensor. So in any camera, the higher the f-stop number, the smaller is the hole. That means less light would pass through the camera lens and hit the sensor, and vice versa. So the second thing we're going to talk about is shutter speed. So nowadays most people use mirrorless cameras. That means they don't have a mirror, but before the mirrorless era, people used to use a DSLR which basically had a mirror in front of the sensor which would flip up and down as you press the button depending on the shutter speed. So higher the shutter speed number, the faster the mirror would flip, and the less amount of time the sensor would be exposed to the light, which means the image would be darker as less light is hitting the sensor. And smaller the shutter speed number, that means the longer time the mirror would be up and more light would hit the sensors, which means the photo would be brighter. Now the third basic thing in any camera is the ISO. You could think about ISO as an artificial light source that the camera generates itself to basically it makes the sensor a little bit more sensitive to the light. ISO is generally 100 during daytime, and whether you're shooting indoors or during an overcast day, you would use somewhere between 400 to 800, and during nighttime the ISO usually is above 1000 in most cases. But remember one thing, nowadays cameras are very good, but if you're using older cameras, the higher the ISO number, the more sensitive the sensor would become to light, but also that would introduce more noise or more grain in your photos. Next, we are going to talk about white balance. So what is white balance? It is basically adjustments made to the camera so that we get the most natural looking image out of our camera. As you might have noticed, in your default white balance settings, we have sunny day, we have harsh light, we have cloudy, we have indoors, we have fluorescent, and many more. So basically what that does is, if you set it on auto, it would make adjustments depending on the situation and make adjustments to the camera so that you get the best color possible out of your photo or video. So after white balance, we are going to talk about image quality, that is JPEG or RAW. So basically what RAW is, it stores all the information that the camera can see inside that photo, and it increases the dynamic range and your flexibility so that you are more flexible during the editing process and can make extreme changes to a particular photo. JPEG is nothing but a compressed version of the photo. Even JPEG large is quite compressed and you cannot make as many changes as you would be able to make when shooting in RAW. So I would highly suggest you shoot RAW photos. And lastly, we are going to talk about sensor size. So basically there are two sensor sizes that are very famous around the world. The first one is APS-C or cropped sensor, and the second one is full frame. So basically what APS-C means is that it is a smaller sensor compared to a full frame sensor, and that any lens you put on an APS-C size sensor, you have to multiply the focal length of that lens by 1.5 or 1.6 depending on what brand you're shooting to get the actual focal length, because the sensor zooms in a little bit. And full frame is nothing but standard 35mm that you used to get with your film size. That's it for today's video. I hope you learned something new, and if you did, leave a like down below and subscribe, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care.